Welcome back to my kitchen. It's like 5 seconds later from the last video, and today we're making flatbread. Oh, there's not really a picture. Flatbread. I'm making it from this recipe from the Easy Vegetarian Kitchen. I made it yesterday and I thought it was really good. And if you look back on the previous video, we made harvest soup, so we're making some flatbread to accompany that. So for this recipe, you're gonna need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, half teaspoon sea salt, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 6 tablespoons of warm water. The recipe says that you mix all the dry ingredients first, so we're gonna start with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, I have to get my half a cup. And then it says 2 teaspoons of baking powder. 2 teaspoons. I really like this recipe because I was really shocked how quick it was making it. It took, well, you'll see it takes about like 45 minutes, which is crazy. So you're gonna whisk that all together. Oh, I forgot. You add half a teaspoon of sea salt. We're just gonna use iodized salt because that's what we have. And once all those dry ingredients are mixed together well, the recipe says to first you add in of the wet ingredients 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm just gonna put these away really quick. So you add in 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I don't really know if making flatbread counts as baking, because I know baking you have to be like ultra precise, but I'm not sure if that's like the same case with this, but it's best to follow the recipe probably. I know yesterday when I was baking it, I added like probably a little bit extra flour and olive oil, but it was still good. So then the recipe says that either with your fingers or a fork to just mix the olive oil in, and it says mix it until you have a jagged dough, which that's an interesting, although it says mix until it looks shaggy. I don't know if that's a cooking term, but I thought that was an interesting adjective to use for mixing. So I just switched to using my hands because it was taking quite a while with the fork. I know yesterday I think I used my hands also. So just personally, I know it says you could do fork or hands. I think hands work best for this. Just make sure that you washed your hands before. Which I totally did. So the method that works best for me, I kind of grab a clump in my hand and then like squish it like you're like rubbing sand together, and that's worked pretty well for me. I don't know any other techniques. If other people have better techniques, comment below. Once the flour is well incorporated with the olive oil, you add 6 tablespoons of warm water. And then you add 1 tablespoon of honey. I know that honey can kind of be hard to measure since it sticks a little bit to the tablespoon. What I did yesterday, and I think worked really well, I just don't have time to do it today because our camera's about to overheat, is I put the water in a ramekin, I heated it up first, and then I put the honey inside in the ramekin, and then I stirred it all together so the water like melted the honey a little bit and it was incorporated, and then I put that mixture into the flour. So next step, I like to use a spoon to mix up all my dough. I know you usually use a whisk, but me personally, I just hate having to clean whisks. I don't like how it gets like in all the little crevices. If you don't mind, go for it. Use a whisk. But I'm just gonna start mixing the dough with a spoon, and then I'm gonna transfer and use my hands once it's a little bit firmer. So the dough's formed kind of like a solid form. So the dough's made like a solid form, not really a circle, but it's all like stuck together. So I've switched to using my hands now, and I'm just kind of folding it, pressing it together, working it with my hands to make sure all the ingredients are mixed well together. But I don't really know what the consistency of this dough is most similar, because I don't really make things that are made out of dough that often. But I would say it kind of reminds me of like a tortilla consistency, almost like tortilla dough consistency. I remember that because I played with tortilla dough at Chevy's. So once the dough's formed a tortilla-like consistency, a tortilla dough consistency like this, I like to put it make it into a ball, and then you're supposed to cover it and then let it rest for 30 minutes. And then while that rests, I like to do all the dishes, clean up anything that might have gotten messy and put all the stuff away, and then get out any pans that I'm gonna use for making the flatbread. The dough has been rested for 30 minutes now, covered, and we're just gonna roll it out with a rolling pin until the recipe book says until it's 6 by 8 inches. The recipe says that you can cut this in half, but I think it's fine if you're gonna cut it up anyway after it's cooked, if you just leave it as a whole. Something really important that I learned yesterday, because the recipe book says only to cook it for like 2 to 3 minutes. I think that like you really can't roll it too thin, because the second you put it in the pan, it like bounces back, and then it almost, for me at least, it didn't really cook all the way through because it was too thick. Actually, I think we might have to cut this in half, because I don't think our pan is large enough for this. But if you have a pan, it's just a griddle, but all we have is a pan. So if you have something that's large enough, then you can keep it all in one piece. While you're rolling out your dough, you can go ahead and preheat your pan. We use the large pan to, I think it says, what does it say? It says medium low heat. I think actually low heat is better because it allows the flatbread to cook all the way through. So I just go ahead and set that at low heat. I like to put just a little bit of butter on the pan. I'm not sure if this pan is a non-stick pan, but I think it makes the flatbread taste a little bit nicer. Like I said, I don't think that you can roll this out too thin because it didn't cook all the way through last time. I'm just cutting off the excess so that it fits in the pan. I think this is 6 by 8.
No.
Once you got the dough really, really flat and your pan is heated up, low to medium heat, you're just gonna go ahead and leave it in there. The recipe says 2 to 3 minutes. I think if you're keeping it at low temperature, it might take a little bit longer than that, but I think you'll have a more even cook throughout the flatbread. So while that's just sitting there on the stove, I'm gonna roll out the other. So it's been about 4 or 5 minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and flip the flatbread. And as you can see, it has a nice brown layering on it. And I'm just gonna let the next side rest for another 3 to 4 minutes. It's been about another 5 to 6 minutes, and the flatbread's all done. So you just need to cut it up. I like to put a little bit of butter on it, and then you can serve it as your side for any dish. We're serving it as a side for soup today, but sometimes we like to put some grilled veggies on it, put some hummus on it. It's really nice. It is time for dinner. For dinner, he's having harvest soup, which I made in the last video, and flatbread, but he's reviewing the flatbread now. What do you think?
It's pretty good.
Any feedback?
It could be a little flatter, although I like it doughy. I think it would be good with some hummus on the side, some red pepper hummus.
Oh, okay. So, but what would you rate it?
10 out of 10.
Wow, another 10 out of 10. Yay. Goodbye. I'll see you next episode.